I never told my son that I made $50,000 a month, not because I was hiding my money, but because I was shielding his soul. But that protective silence turned into a weapon the night his wife's parents invited me to dinner at the city's most expensive restaurant. I walked in looking like a beggar, and I walked out holding their entire family's dignity in my worn-out canvas bag. Trust me, they deserved every single second of the public humiliation they got. My name is Eleanor Vance, and for 35 years I was two people. There was the Eleanor that my son, Jason, knew. The mother who wore old sweaters, drove a simple sedan until the wheels fell off, and always cooked with budget cuts in mind. I was just the woman who worked an office job. Nothing special, nothing grand. And then there was the real Eleanor, the chief financial officer for a global firm, a woman who commanded respect in 5 countries, signing contracts worth millions. I never once corrected Jason's assumption because money was never a trophy for me. I wanted him to value effort and character over a bank balance. So, I saved, invested, and multiplied my wealth in secret. My true power lay in my silence and my ability to observe. I was observing very closely when Jason called that Wednesday. His voice had that strained, nervous edge it only got when he was trying to impress someone. Mom, Charlotte's parents, Victoria and Harrison, are in town. They insist on meeting you. We're having dinner Saturday night at the Grandeur. Please, please come. I asked him, very calmly, what he had told them about me. There was a long pause. Well, he stammered, I just said you worked administrative hours, live comfortably, but, you know, simply, I said you don't have much money, Mom. The word simply hung in the air like a poisoned dart. It wasn't an invitation. It was a desperate plea from a son worried his mother would embarrass him. It was a sign. If they were ready to judge me based on my perceived poverty, I would give them a masterpiece of judgment. I decided to fully embody the broken, naive, working-class mother they expected. I wanted to feel the full sting of their judgment, raw and unfiltered. My gut told me Victoria and Harrison were the kind of people who weighed a person's soul by the cost of their shoes, and my gut instinct in the corporate world had never been wrong. Saturday arrived. I dug into the back of my closet for my costume, a shapeless, faded gray dress, threadbare shoes, and a canvas tote bag older than Jason. No jewelry, no watch, just the exhaustion of a woman who had worked too long and too hard for too little. I looked in the mirror. Perfect. I looked insignificant. I called a ride to the Grandeur, a restaurant so exclusive that the waiters likely made more than I was pretending to earn. Every fiber of my being wanted to wear my designer suit, but the woman walking into that restaurant was not the CFO. She was merely Eleanor Vance, waiting to see exactly how cruel the wealthy could be. I stepped across the marble floor of the lobby. Jason saw me first. His eyes widened, scanning my outfit with a flicker of shame he couldn't hide. Mom, he mumbled, his voice tight. Charlotte gave me a quick, cold peck on the cheek and quickly introduced me to her parents. And there they sat, Victoria and Harrison waiting like royalty. Victoria was dripping in jewels, her posture rigid with self-importance. Harrison wore a suit that probably cost my annual pretend salary. Victoria's eyes scanned me once, twice, lingering on my threadbare dress and my old tote. In that look, I saw it all. The instant, chilling judgment and the profound disappointment. A pleasure, Victoria said, extending a hand that was surprisingly weak. I offered a small, timid smile, apologizing with my whole demeanor for existing. I was placed in the furthest, least desirable seat at the table, a clear indication of my status. When the waiter presented the menus written in French, Victoria sighed and ordered for me, something simple, nothing expensive. We don't want to overdo it. The line landed like a punch, suggesting my son's wife's family was indulging me out of pity. The game had begun. Victoria naturally began talking about money. She spoke of their $1,000-a-night hotel room and the few thousand they casually dropped at a luxury boutique. She was building a financial pedestal, and I was clearly meant to be the dirt under it. "And you, Eleanor?" she asked, her tone sweet but condescending. "What exactly do you do?" I replied meekly, "I work in an office, dear. Filing, paperwork, simple things." Victoria and Harrison exchanged a knowing look of pity. "Ah, administrative work. Honest work, of course. All jobs are dignified," Victoria patronized. I simply nodded, the passive victim of their social arithmetic. Then came the second, deeper cut. Victoria leaned in, lowering her voice in a pretense of concern. It must be terribly difficult, living alone, supporting yourself on that kind of income. At your age. Does your salary truly cover everything? I replied, barely audible. I manage. I save where I can. I don't need much. Victoria sighed dramatically, shaking her head. Oh, you are so brave, Eleanor. I truly admire women who struggle alone. Although, of course, one always wishes to give our children more, to set them up better. But well, everyone gives what they can. The message was clear. I had failed my son. I was a poor, insufficient mother. Jason gripped his fork under the table, his knuckles white. Charlotte avoided my gaze. Victoria then launched into a detailed history of their generosity to Jason and Charlotte. We paid the down payment on their house. We covered the entire European honeymoon. That's just who we are. We believe in supporting our children, ensuring their stability. And you, Eleanor, were you able to help Jason with anything when they got married? The question was a sharp, focused knife. Not much, I whispered. Just a small gift, what I could afford. Victoria beamed. How sweet. The intention is what's important, of course. The rage inside me was no longer a flicker. It was a controlled, cold fire. It wasn't anger at the insult. It was anger at the hypocrisy. I knew my moment was coming. I allowed Victoria to continue preening about her expensive wine, her globe-trotting travels, and her trained palate. She was exposing the sheer emptiness behind their wealth. The final straw came with dessert. Over a $30 piece of cake, Victoria shifted her tone to falsely maternal and serious. Eleanor, we need to discuss something serious as a family. Marcus is our son-in-law, and we want the best for our daughter. I respect that you did your best raising Jason, but he's at a different stage now. He needs stability. Jason tried to interrupt, but Victoria waved him down. She looked me dead in the eye. Financial, emotional stability. We don't want Jason to have any unnecessary burdens. She called me a burden. Me, the woman who had built an empire in silence. My son was clenching his jaw, and Charlotte was staring intently at her plate. Burdens, I repeated softly, testing the word. Victoria, mistaking my calm for submission, sighed dramatically. Yes, Eleanor. It's natural for Jason to worry about you at your age, with your limited means. We don't want that worry to affect their marriage. So, she paused, delivering the final blow with a triumphant smile. Harrison and I would like to offer you a small monthly allowance, something modest, of course, say $700. In exchange, we only ask you to respect their space, not to interfere, to let them build their life together in peace. It wasn't an offer, it was a bribe. They wanted to pay me to disappear, to buy my silence and my absence from my son's life for $700 a month. Jason exploded. Mom, that is enough. You don't have to listen to this. Victoria interrupted him. Jason, calm down. Your mother is a sensible woman. She understands. I took a slow, deep breath, maintaining a terrifying calm. I wiped my lips and put my napkin down. The silence was so heavy you could cut it with a knife. Everyone was watching me. Then, my voice came out. It was no longer the timid whisper of the office secretary. It was the clear, cold voice of the chief financial officer. That is an interesting offer, Victoria. Truly very generous. Victoria smiled, victorious. I'm glad you see it that way. But I have a few questions just to clarify. Victoria blinked. Of course. Ask anything. I leaned forward. How much exactly? I asked. Would you consider a modest monthly allowance? She hesitated. Around $500 to $700 depending on your needs. I see. I nodded slowly. So, $700 a month for me to disappear from my son's life? Victoria frowned. I wouldn't phrase it that way, Eleanor, but I would. I corrected her, my tone sharpening. Tell me, I continued, all that investment you mentioned? The $40,000 for the down payment, the $15,000 for the honeymoon, that $55,000 in total. Did all that money buy you anything, Victoria? She looked confused. Buy me. What? My gaze was fixed on her, relentless. Did it buy you respect? Did it buy you real love? Or did it just buy obedience? The atmosphere at the table shattered. Victoria's victorious smile vanished. "Excuse me," she stammered. My voice was now a razor's edge. "You have spent the entire dinner talking about money. How much things cost, how much you spent. But you haven't asked once if I'm happy, if I need company, if something hurts me. You calculated my worth with your wallet. And apparently to you, I am worth $700 a month. And do you know what I've discovered, Victoria? The people who talk most about money are the ones who least understand their true value." Harrison tried to intervene. "I think you are misinterpreting my wife's intentions." "I misinterpreted." I challenged him. "Did I misinterpret when you called me a burden to my son? Did I misinterpret the condescension or the offer to buy my silence?" Harrison was speechless. I slowly rose from my chair, my posture changing completely. I was no longer shrinking. I was towering. I looked at Victoria with genuine curiosity. "You admire brave women," you said. "Tell me, Victoria, have you ever built an empire from scratch? Have you ever worked without your husband's safety net?" Victoria stammered about managing investments and properties. I nodded, cutting her off. "Investments your husband built. Properties you bought together. There's a fundamental difference between managing money that already exists and creating it brick by brick, isn't there?" I turned to Jason, who was staring at me, pale, hearing my story for the first time. 40 years ago, Jason, I was 23 years old. I was a secretary earning minimum wage, living in a rented room. I was completely alone. Then I was pregnant and the father disappeared. My family abandoned me. I had to choose, give up or keep going. I chose to keep going. My voice was low, but every word was a stone dropping. I went back to work 2 weeks after you were born, Jason. I worked 12-hour days. I studied at the public library. I taught myself finance, accounting, administration, all while raising you alone, paying the rent, paying the bills. Victoria's arrogant posture was visibly crumbling. "And I climbed the ladder," I stated. "Secretary to assistant, assistant to coordinator, coordinator to director. It took me 20 years of nonstop work and sacrifices you cannot even imagine. But I did it. And do you know what I earn now, Victoria?" She shook her head. $50,000 a month. The sound of Jason dropping his fork was the loudest sound in the room. Charlotte gasped. Victoria froze. $50,000 a month, I repeated, my tone unwavering. "For almost 20 years, I am a regional director. I oversee millions in budgets and manage thousands of employees. I sign contracts that you couldn't read without a lawyer, and I do it every day." Jason was trembling. "Mom, why did you never tell me?" "Because you didn't need to know, son. I wanted you to value effort, not money. I wanted you to become a person, not an heir. Money corrupts, and I wouldn't let it corrupt you." Charlotte, through tears, finally spoke. "Why do you live in that small apartment? Why the simple clothes? Why not the luxury car?" I smiled. "Because I don't need to impress anyone, Charlotte. True wealth isn't shown off. I learned that the more you have, the less you need to prove it." I looked straight at Victoria. "That's why I came dressed like this. I wanted to see how you would treat me if you thought I had nothing. I wanted to see your true colors, and I saw them perfectly." Victoria was scarlet with humiliation. "This is ridiculous. If you earned so much, we would know." "You know now," I countered, "because I let you. I don't spend my money on flashy jewelry or expensive restaurants. I invest it. I multiply it." Harrison tried to save face, but I cut him off. "I misinterpreted your intentions. I misinterpreted the word burden. I misinterpreted your offer to buy my absence for $700 a month." I paused, the silence heavy. "Money does not buy class, Harrison. It does not buy empathy. You have money, but you lack everything that truly matters." I stood up fully, my hands resting on the table. "I didn't make you look like fools, Victoria. You did that all on your own. I just gave you the opportunity to show who you are, and you did it magnificently." Charlotte was sobbing. I turned back to Victoria, my voice cold. "You offered me $700 a month. Let me make you a counteroffer. I will give you $1 million right now if you can prove you ever treated anyone kindly who didn't have money." Victoria opened and closed her mouth, speechless. "Exactly," I said. "You can't. Because to you, people are only worth what they have in the bank. That is the difference between you and me. I built wealth, you just spend it. I earned respect, you buy it. I have dignity, you have bank accounts. I reached into my old canvas tote, pulled out a sleek black Centurion card, and dropped it onto the table in front of Victoria. This is my corporate card. Unlimited limit. Pay for the entire dinner, including a generous tip. Consider it a gift from a broke and naive mother. Victoria looked at the card like a poisonous snake. Black, heavy, with my name engraved. Eleanor Vance, CFO. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. I don't need your money, she stammered. I know, I replied, but I didn't need your pity, and yet you offered it to me all night. Keep the card as a souvenir, as a reminder that not everything is as it seems. Harrison sputtered about disrespect, but I cut him short. Where was your respect when you called me a burden, when you tried to buy me off? I looked at Charlotte, tears streaming down her face. Charlotte, you are not to blame for your parents, but you must choose how you act. You must choose your own values. Jason rushed to me, embracing me. Mom, forgive me for assuming, for not asking. There is nothing to forgive, son. You wanted your family to meet. That is beautiful. What happened was their fault. And a little bit mine because I chose to play their game. I walked out with Jason. The night air was fresh. He confessed his shame, his pride, and his confusion. I needed you to grow up valuing effort, not money. To fight for your life, not depend on a safety net. You did well, son. You grew up valuing the right things. Before I got into the waiting car, Jason asked the final question. Why didn't you just tell them the truth from the beginning, Mom? I looked him in the eye. Because I needed to know, son. I needed to confirm if my suspicions were correct, that they were exactly the kind of people who despise others for not having the same things. And unfortunately, I was right. I left Jason to talk to Charlotte and face her parents. I knew he was maturing, learning to set boundaries and choose the higher path. I closed my eyes in the car. I didn't feel victorious, but I felt free. I had exposed the truth, protected my peace, and taught my son a lesson in dignity that money could never buy. And that, Aunt Cora's dear listener, was more than enough. Love has no price, and that is a lesson Victoria and Harrison will never learn. Thank you for listening to Aunt Cora's Porch Stories. If this story of dignity and truth touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you would have done in Eleanor's place.